Hey, I'm going to turn my camera off here. And so before we jump into Title II and the overview, um, followed by the QA, we want to take the first 10 minutes to answer a question that we frequently get and to share some accessibility wins of our own. The question that we frequently get is, how is NCDIT supporting agencies to help meet compliance? So as we know, Title II requires that all public-facing government websites, applications, documents, they must meet the WCAG 2.1 Level AA compliance. And if you are a state of North Carolina agency, you have a compliance date of April 24th, 2026 to avoid legal action. And I'd like to just say, this compliance date is only the beginning. We come to this date, yes, you should have everything accessible, but as you go forward, that work continues. Everything that you create going forward needs to continue to be made accessibly. So how are we supporting agencies? NCDIT, we provide what we're calling a website quality and accessibility monitoring tool at no cost to all agencies, and that includes both state and local. It's powered by Dubbot, and that's like D as in David, U, B as in boy, bot. My colleague John said the other day you could think of it as rub-a-dub-dub bot. Yeah. So this tool automates checks for common accessibility issues. It scans for PDFs. It will tell you if your PDFs are tagged, and it also does many more things. We have centralized guidance and standards that are aligned with the requirements. And we also have a consultation and offer technical assistance to help agencies understand, well, one, what this monitoring tool is telling you, to help then prioritize the risk based on, is it a critical issue? Does it completely block somebody from being able to use this site or application? And kind of help you form a remediation plan. We have a section on the IT website. I provided the URL here, that we are continually updating, adding new information every day as things arise. So I encourage you to bookmark that and keep returning to it. So as we know, one of the biggest high risk areas right now in government is documents and PDF accessibility. Why is that one of the greatest risks? Simply because of the sheer volume of these. We have tens of thousands of PDFs out there, and to remediate these are very time intensive and expensive. So a win for us, one win here, is we are actively working with Google, who we're using their generative AI model, Gemini, to take these PDFs and ultimately convert them to HTML. And we are able to do this for as little as 3 cents a page. Now, if you're an agency on the Digital Commons platform, this cost will be picked up for you. This will be available to you at no charge. When we convert the PDF to HTML, the link to the previous document will be redirected to this HTML page. And of course, we know the benefits of HTML is it's natively more accessible, it's responsive to any device, excuse me, and you can translate it into any language that you need to. And you can edit it anytime you want without having to go back into the document and remediate things all over again. Now, there are some exceptions to what we can change to HTML, and right now that are forms. If you have fillable PDF forms, those, if they're actively used, will need to go through a remediation process. Or if you're on the Digital Commons platform, you could always, to convert those to a web form. But if you want to do the remediation process, we are actively negotiating a state term contract for multiple vendor options for agencies to choose from. It's going to be, think of it like a la carte type service. If you need PDF remediation, you have this set of vendors. If you want training, you have this other set of vendors. So we're really excited about that going out and being able to offer that. Ultimately, it is the agencies that are responsible for meeting the accessibility standards. So it is up to you to perform the actual remediation. But again, we are here to provide some tools, help and support, reduce that risk, and just to help you achieve that compliance. So again, I want to point out this new section on our site that provides some of these resources for you. The other thing we're excited to talk to you about is, our Digital Commons platform. We offer state and local governments a accessible website platform where you can host your website. And if you reach out to us before the end of the month and let us know that you want to come on board, you can take advantage of that offer of converting your PDFs to HTML at no charge. There'll be more information coming out about all of this, but since you're members, you get to be in the know first. But if you are an agency who decides to remain on another platform, we are negotiating that state contract, so you'll have multiple vendors with various options that you can choose from. And NCDIT, we will still provide limited technical advice and consultations with you to help you maybe interpret, what the accessibility issue is, and we can offer you some remediation solutions on how to address it. John, would you like to jump in?
Sure, Amy. There's some great questions in the chat there that we'll make sure that we get at. But I just wanted to announce this exciting win. So I'm John Cotter. I work with Amy as the accessibility lead for NCDIT. And we have been working hard to try to get executives to be aware about the ADA Title II deadline, and that there's a lot of work to be done, and we need a lot of people to do it. So we've proposed this idea that was a model from Minnesota, their accessibility program. And they have this model where in each agency, they have a digital accessibility coordinator. So that is sort of like an accessibility lead for each agency. And we thought that would work great here at North Carolina. So we kind of pitched this idea to our executive, and that message is now going out to other executives of the agency. So this is something that we want you to look out for. Each state agency will be asked to name a digital accessibility coordinator. You can go to the next slide, Amy. So what this person would do is spread awareness within the agency, kind of be the point person for accessibility questions, have a good list of resources that they can hand out and give to people. And then we imagine this group will meet regularly with Amy and I and discuss, wins, challenges, anything that, you're seeing happening in your agencies. And then the last slide here, we want you guys to fill this role. We want members of the COP to fill this role. And we don't exactly have specifics on how each agency is going to assign this role. It might be up to the agency to decide that. I don't know if it's going to be a new hire or if they're just going to, temporarily detail someone to that role. Don't know. It's probably going to be up to the agency to decide. So I just wanted to let you all know to just be on the lookout for this opportunity, and it's really exciting.
Awesome. Yeah, I do see a lot of questions in the chat. Some of them we'll be able to address today. I'd like to go ahead and go to the main topic of this, and then we'll circle back to some of these questions. And the ones that we can't answer today, we will get responses back to you in the channel. Is that okay with everyone?
Thank you.
Yeah, and I'll try to answer some while we're going here, Amy, if that's okay.
Perfect. Awesome. Thank you, John. Okay, so today we are talking about Title II for state and local government. Before we start, I always like to give a disclaimer that John and I are not lawyers, so this should not be considered legal advice, but we are very familiar with Title II and the rules, and we're sharing that with you. So just a quick overview of the American with Disability Act. In 1990, President Bush signed as law that prohibits discrimination against people with disabilities. In 96, they clarified that that includes digital resources now. And as we know, in 2024, we saw a new rule come out from the DOJ that applies to all state and local governments. And this Title II update basically says that we as government must provide equal access to programs, services, and activities to everyone, whether they have a disability or not. It applies to all web content and mobile applications. They established a specific requirements compliance date. Now, this is based on your entity size, and I'll show you a slide that goes over those dates. And it specifies a technical standard, and they specified the WCAG 2.1 level AA, which is the internationally recognized standard. It's the most commonly used standard out there. Just a quick definition. When we talk about web content, what are we talking about? And that's anything that is communicated through a user agent or a web browser, an app. This includes the code, the markup, anything that defines the structure, presentation. So things like text, images, videos, documents, and dashboards, things like that. So the WCAG is a set of recommendations that makes websites and digital content more accessible to everyone. It provides these clear rules and best practices for designing and developing your content so that it is perceivable, operable, understandable, and robust for everyone. You can think of it like a blueprint for building websites that everyone can use, regardless of their abilities or the technology that they use to access the web. So, as I mentioned, there's different compliance date based upon the entity size that your government serves. Now, for the state of North Carolina, at 50,000 or more, our compliance date is April 24th of this year. Some of the local government members here might have less than 50 and have an additional year to meet that compliance. So it's important that we can prioritize how we choose what is most important. What is the most commonly used information to make it accessible quickly? There are some limited exceptions noted in the Title II rule, mostly for content that is not as frequently used or that could be particularly hard or cause undue burden for you to address right away. So we're going to go over these exceptions, and if an exception applies, it means generally that the content would not have to meet the guideline unless, and this is a very important unless, somebody specifically asks for an accessible version. If someone asks you for an accessible version, it doesn't matter if it meets any of these exceptions, it still needs to be provided to that individual in an accessible format. So the first one we'll talk about is archived web content. You know, as governments, we have a lot of content that may not even be currently used. It could be outdated. It's no longer needed. Maybe it's repeated somewhere else. Sometimes this information is archived on the website. So the archive web content exception only applies if the following 4 points are met. You created it before the compliance date. You're keeping it only for reference, research, or record keeping. It's kept in a specially marked area for archive content, and you do not alter or update it after you have archived it. So let's see our understanding of this. So if you have a water quality report from 1998 that you've stored in an archive section of your website and you have not updated it, do you feel this would meet the archive web content exception? Feel free to come off mute or post in the chat. I have a yes. Thumbs up to the yes. We have a no. So yes, this probably would fall under the exception because it was created before the compliance date back in 1998. Keeping it only for record keeping. It's kept in an archive section and you have not updated it. This exception, it would probably also apply if there were any handwritten research notes or photos that went with it that you've posted along with it in the archive section. Okay, next one. City council meeting minutes created after the compliance date and posted in an archive section. We have no, not an exception, no, no, no. That's correct. No, it would not fall under the exception, even if it was posted in the archive section of the city's website. It would have to comply because the content was created after the compliance date. Good job. Okay. A 2021 COVID-19 statistics spreadsheet posted in an archive section, later updated. You have a no? 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 This was a little bit of a trick question, a little sneaky on my part because I didn't tell you when it was updated. So, but you got the gist of it. Yes. If it was updated before the compliance date, then no. If it was updated after the compliance date, then yes, you would need to meet the guidelines. Okay, last one for this one. A PDF that includes a current county park map based on data collected after the compliance date. Does this meet the exception? No, no. We have a couple no's, and that's correct. The PDF would not fall under the exception, even if it's posted in an archive section of the website, because it provides current information about the park. It's not just kept for reference, research, or record keeping. Good job. Okay, next exception. Pre-existing conventional electronic documents. And they word it this way to say this encaptures everything: word processing, PowerPoint, Excel, PDFs, which is one of our biggest ones. And we know we have lots of old documents out there, and it can be really hard to make those documents meet the compliance. But the exception to making them compliant, they must meet both of these: that they are in the format that we just talked about, and they're available on your site before your compliance date. There's a caveat to this though. Even if they meet both of them, documents that are currently used to, and this is language straight from the DOJ, apply for, access, or participate in a state or local government service, programs, or activities must meet the guidelines. So we have a Word document. It's a version of a school board sample ballot posted in 2014. Would this meet the document exception? We have a yes, yes. We have a no, we have a yes, yes. We have a no. Okay, so we have a little disagreement on this. According to the DOJ's website, this would probably meet the exception because it meets the first criteria. It falls under the correct format. It's word processing, presentation, PDF, the format, one of those. And it's available on the state or local government's website before the compliance date. And it's not currently used to apply for or participate in services, programs, or activities. I hope that one makes sense. That one was a little tricky. Next one is a PowerPoint presentation posted after the compliance date for an upcoming town hall. Does this meet the exception? No, 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 no. I got lots of no's, and that is correct. And why? It was posted after the compliance date. After the compliance date, The city updates a PDF that was originally posted in 2020 to include new contact information. Does this meet the exception?
Nope.
You guys are on it. That is correct. It would not qualify for the exception simply because it was updated after the compliance date. Last one in here. State posted a PDF version of a business license application in 2020 that is still used to apply. Does this meet the exception?
No.
That's correct. No. Very good. And why? Does anybody want to say why? Exactly. It's actively being used to apply for, access, or participate in services, programs, or activities. Very good. Okay. The next exception is we're going to talk about content that's posted by a third party. So sometimes third parties post content on governments' websites or mobile apps. And these third parties are members of the public or others who are not controlled by or acting on your behalf. So an example of that would be a message that someone of the public posted on a town's online message board. That would probably fall under this exception. Now, where this exception does not apply, and we'll go through these individually, the third-party content posted by the state or local government. So an example of this, many governments post content on their site that has been developed from an outside technology company. Maybe it's a calendar or some kind of scheduling tool, a map, reservation systems, payment system, those kinds of things. Those would not fall under the exception, and they would need to meet the compliance level because it's posted on your behalf. The next one is content posted by a state or local government's contractor vendor. So if you use a company to design, manage, or update your website, that content that the company posts for you would not fall under the exception. It would usually need to meet the compliance level. And the third one is they're talking about tools and platforms that allow third parties to post content. So back to the first one where I gave you the example of a message that a member had posted on a message board. You're not responsible for making their message accessible. However, you are responsible for having an accessible platform. The message board itself must be accessible so that everybody has an equal opportunity to participate. Okay, next one is individualized documents that are password protected. So sometimes agencies use password protected websites to share documents that are for specific individuals. Like you can think of a water or a tax bill. It would really be hard and cause undue burden to make all of these documents accessible right away for everyone. So the exception of this rules is that they have to meet all three of these. They are in that document format. We're talking about Word, PDF, PowerPoint, spreadsheets. The document itself is about a specific person, property, or account, and the document is password protected or otherwise secured behind a website login. So an example, a PDF version of a water bill for a person's home that is available in that person's secure account on the city's the website, that would probably fall under the exception. So here we go. A person's water bill is made available for them to view on a password-protected website as HTML content. Does this meet the individualized documents exception? What do y'all think? We have a yes, we have a no. We have some yeses. Okay, again, I was a little sneaky with you, and that was bad. But no, the exception would not apply simply because it's not in one of the document formats. It's posted as HTML. Sorry, I did that. Okay. Last one in this section. A PDF posted on a password protected site about an incoming rate increase for all customers. Does that meet the individualized documents exception? We have a no, we have a no, no. And that's correct. The exception would not apply because that document is not about one customer's account. It's for everyone. Okay, good job. The next exception is pre-existing social media posts. I mean, for many of you, making all of your past social media posts accessible would be impossible. And there's little value to making some of these old posts accessible because they're usually intended at the time to provide updates about things that are happening. And these are events that are in the past. So for the communications teams out there, you do not need to worry about going back to make these accessible. I encourage you to start today, if you're not already, making all your future posts accessible. Okay, so we've gone over all the exceptions, but it does not change that we must provide everyone, all individuals, disabilities, no disabilities, effective communication, reasonable modifications, and equal opportunity to participate in a benefit. And most importantly, provide an accessible format to a person who requests it, even if it meets an exception. There is one other thing out there about conforming alternative versions. And that is when there's two versions of the same content, one that's accessible and another one that is not. The accessible version is called a conforming alternate version. According to the DOJ rules, this is usually not an acceptable practice because everyone should get equal access to that content on the same page. Under this rule, an exception could be used to offer a conforming alternate version in very limited circumstances. And that would be if there's a technical or a legal limitation that prevents this inaccessible content from being made accessible. If you are going to go this route, and it's very challenging for you to make it accessible because there's a technical or legal limitation, I would recommend you keep documentation of this limitation just in case you need it for legal purposes later. Okay, last thing is where do I start? Okay, I talked a little bit at the beginning about the automated accessibility checker that we have. This is available to all state and local government agencies. And in some cases, we have the ability to scan behind logins. It'll help you find your most common issues, and it's going to scan your PDFs and tell you if it's tagged or not. This is a huge benefit because right now, if you don't have this tool, really the only way that you can be sure if your PDF has tags is opening it in Adobe Acrobat. There may be some other tools out there now. I shouldn't say the only tool, but as far as what we have available to us now, we have Adobe Acrobat to check that. Okay, so questions. Is there anything in the chat that we haven't answered, John, or
Yeah, there's a lot of good questions. I tried to answer a lot of them, and it looks like a few more are still rolling in. So how about if there's anything I didn't address, can you just vocalize it now and we can try to answer it? Great questions, by the way.
absolutely.
Hey, this is Nicole
Oh,
Shoemaker. I have a
hi,
question
Nicole.
from county government.
Yeah.
So not as common for the state, but definitely those of us in county and municipal government, we have public meetings a lot. We have boards of commissioners, we have city council meetings. And it's my understanding that those meetings, if broadcast on our website, either live or after the fact recorded, that those do need to meet certain WCAG requirements. And so I'm just trying to confirm that and then find out if if it's okay to use like automated transcription, or if we are going to need to use live interpreters for transcription and captioning and cart services.
John, do you want to take that one?
I was going to turn it over to you, Amy.
Well, generally, if you are posting these videos, yes, they do need to have captions. Um, Ideally, you would be doing it now. Legally, though, yeah, you would have to your compliance date, I believe. I would check with your general counsel, though, on that to confirm it. Um, Recently, we had been receiving more requests for ASL services. That is something that we're looking into ourselves. Um, I don't know if that answered your question. I got off topic there a little bit. Is there something I didn't directly respond to, Nicole, that I could respond to better?
Well, as best as I can tell, to be compliant with 2.1 AA, it's sufficient to have, it just says you have to have captions, audio descriptions, those kinds of
Ah,
things. It doesn't say that it has to be live, right? Because like I have
right.
Microsoft captioning this
That-
conversation right now for me. Um,
Yeah, well, there's two different WCAG success criterion. There's one about pre-recorded media, and then there is one about live. Do you want me to post a link to that? It's
um,
1.2.4 is about live
yeah,
captions.
I'm looking at that one and it does say captions, but it doesn't say whether they have to be human generated captions or computer generated captions.
Right,
Because,
okay. I get your
right, do you
point.
know what
Yeah.
I'm saying? Because like Teams is
Right, yeah,
completely
yeah.
mutilating what I'm saying
It's
right now. I guess
yeah,
because
yeah.
of my southern accent.
Yeah. Oh, no, you don't have an accent. Um So yeah, you're right. WCAG is pretty vague. It doesn't say it doesn't say automated captions aren't okay. It just says captions are provided for all live audio. So That's tough. I mean, I would say automated captions are better than nothing for sure, right? And that probably, if you had automated captions, you would probably meet that success criterion. But if you do have a way to, review well, it's live. You can't really review it, right? So then, yeah, it kind of has to be automated. Sorry, I'm arriving at this conclusion here live. If anyone has
Well, I'm
any other
wondering if
insight, feel free to weigh in.
yeah, I'm wondering if certain tools might allow you after the fact to go in and kind of manually proof the transcription and correct
Well,
any
yeah.
typos that you find.
Yeah. So then, for the pre-recorded captions, that's SC 1.2.2, and that gets into, let's see. Yeah, again, the SC doesn't say it needs to be perfect. It just says captions are provided for all pre-recorded audio content. So, yeah, my general advice would be like, these success criteria exist to improve the accessibility for the person, right? So you're looking at trying to improve the quality. So automated captions better than nothing, and probably lets you meet the success criterion. If you can, look at the captions to verify how correct they are. Sometimes in captions, yeah, people have different accents, like you said. Sometimes people use acronyms. Automated things don't get those right. You want to make corrections. Sometimes you have the names of products that automated captions doesn't get right. So yeah, some software does let you go in and make modifications to the automated captioning. That helps answer.
Yes, thank you. But then sign language interpretation is level AAA, right? And so it's great, but it's above and beyond what the law requires, right?
Yeah, there's no A or AA requirements that sign language is needed for live events. And what we're aiming for is level AA. So if there's AAA requirements about sign language, yeah, 1.2.6 is about sign language. That's AAA. That's above and beyond what state requirements are.
However, we are trying to accommodate it if someone reaches out with an accommodation request.
All right, so how about we got a lot of Dubbot questions here. Phoebe, are you seeing those?
Yeah, I'm trying to answer as many as I can.
Okay.
So
just so
Dubbot
folks know,
Dubbot does not check for tag order, but it does let you know whether or not tags exist. Whether or not you want to replace Dubbot with Adobe, I have no idea. I don't know. Somebody's asking John and Amy if Dubbot would replace having Adobe license for checking compliance.
Well, Dubbot, so Adobe Pro lets you modify tags. Dubbot does not. Let me just explain to everyone what Dubbot is real quick. Dubbot is an automated web crawling tool that will just crawl websites. And so if you have a website and you're at North Carolina, you can get your website on Dubbot and it'll crawl it. It'll look for accessibility issues in the web pages. And it'll also look at your documents and tell you, it'll be able to check for tags and things like that. So that's what these questions are about. So I think you still might find value in having Adobe Pro licenses if you need to start making corrections to the documents. But Dubbot is a great tool to be able to just scan and take an inventory of what you have, let you know if there's tags, and then it can even look at the documents and throw some alerts for accessibility issues it finds within the documents.
Phoebe, there was a question asked by Jenny Abramson about Dubbot and PII. Could you address that?
Yes. We will not, Dubbot, I'm kind of the manager of Dubbot, and we are not allowed to crawl a site that has PII or PHI. and only people with an NCID are able to access DubBot. But I have posted my email address, and we can discuss further if you want to reach out to me directly. I'm happy to walk you through it. We can also, I think Amy mentioned, crawl some sites that are behind a login. We have an NCID for DubBot to use to get that done. However, there are 4 different types of NCIDs. And if your site requires one of those types that we do not have, the way we can skirt that is to have you set up a temporary username and password that you send to me and my DubBot rep via an encrypted email address, and we can try to crawl it that way.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Jessica, you have a question?
Yeah, excuse me. Getting over some bronchitis.
Oh,
Along those lines, if you have PII, I would imagine if it's a dashboard or a website or what have you, it's not publicly accessible anyway. So would you need to worry about meeting the accessibility requirements if it was something that was, say, just for a select group of users?
If it's public facing, yes, you would. Just because it's for, if it's a web
Why would
app.
something with PII be public facing? It has PII.
Well, if it's a web app that's used, the public uses, they have to log in. It has their personal PII. That person
But
might have a disability.
what about if it is not that, like say a dashboard that certain individuals at the Department of Public Health might use? So there's PII
So,
on it, but it's not being used by the general public.
oh, well then, yeah, so Title II ADA does not request that that be accessible. But I will still tell you, you should make it accessible because we might have employees with disabilities that use our stuff, but nothing in ADA currently requests that. Jenny?
Yes, thank you. So along those same lines, that was just asked, if our website is, let's say, we currently have a website. It's PassArt, and it's accessible to nursing facilities, hospitals, and level 2 evaluators. It does contain PHI and PII. Would that website then, because it's specific to like hospitals and nursing facilities, would that website be required to also follow the Title II?
I think the answer is yes, but Amy, what would you say to that?
um, that's a little tricky one.
Mm-hmm.
I would think yes, but to be safe, I would run that through your general counsel.
Okay. Thank you.
A good question. Ashley, you have your hand up?
Yeah, I think I'm just following along on Jesse and Jenny's question, and I think it would be helpful to have a clearer definition of public facing. I think we often confuse public facing with publicly available, and the questions I'm hearing and the questions we have are, what if it's not internal to us, meaning only our teams or our employees have access, like SharePoint, for example, that's internal, versus external facing, maybe a better way to define that public facing. So external means customers, not our teams, have access, and those customers may be the public, or they may be a select group of providers or officers or other agencies as our customers to those websites. So I think a little bit more clarity on what's in scope and what's out of scope as it relates to public facing and whether or not something is publicly accessible. Those things I think are getting conflated.
Hmm. Yeah, that's a good thing. We should probably be really clear about how we define what public facing means. To me, public facing means the public can access it. So if it's if you can link to it and you can get to it from, your personal phone or personal device, that would be public facing.
And I think our question is, what if you can do both of those things, but it's behind a login because it is a dedicated user group? And that user group may be an
Gotcha.
individual with the login, or it might be a class of individuals like providers or officers in this case who need to access it. But because of the sensitivity of the information, they do have access controls on that content, but it's still customer facing in that sense.
My understanding, and Amy and John, please correct me if I'm speaking out of turn, but yes, that would still need to be made accessible. However, given the deadline and the amount of work that we all have to make sure that we have provided accessible content, is that there are going to be ambulance chasers out there kind of looking for sites that are not accessible. I would focus on those sites and that content that gets the most traffic, and anything behind a login isn't going to get as much traffic as the sites that aren't. However, anybody who accesses your content using a login can request that that content be made accessible. So it's good practice to do it when you can, but I would focus on the sites that don't require a login first. In my humble opinion, that's the approach I would take.
Yeah, and so I'm going to say something that's kind of contrary to that. When you have just a static website that anyone can get to and they don't need to log in, that's pretty exposed. Like anybody can run a web accessibility scanner and find those problems, right? So for that reason, that may be why you want to prioritize, because you want to prioritize the things that can be found. But for the things that can't be found because they're behind a login, you can't run a scanner behind that because you need to log in. But contrary to what Phoebe was saying, though, content that's behind a login is important stuff. And if the public needs that to get something from the government, and if they have a disability and they can't get a service from the government on a site that they need to log into, they're going to be frustrated, right? And they might feel discriminated against. So that's what these laws are about. So for that reason, I think the stuff behind the login that gives the public access to something that the government gives, maybe that's even more important to prioritize. These are great questions.
Yeah, we have 5 minutes left. Is there anything in the chat, if you posted, that didn't get answered, that you want to bring up? John and I will review the chat again after the meeting if there's something, but if there's anything you want to bring up in these last few minutes, please do.
This is Neil McHenry. We had a question about how this interacts with language support, like translation and interpretation. As I read the rule, I didn't see anything that specifically applies to that, but of course those are still, laws and regulations that are in effect. Did you all have any guidance on that?
So, Amy, did you get that question? Did you catch that?
I got part of it of language translation.
Repeat it one more time. Sorry.
Yeah, so we had a question from somebody asking, they said ADA regulations require that we provide effective communication to people with disabilities, and that often does necessitate like language support, translation, interpretation
Different languages.
services.
Okay.
Yeah, in different languages. I didn't see that was really a
Yeah.
part of this particular rule, but obviously that
Okay.
stuff is still in effect, right? I mean, I don't know.
Yeah, agree. There's nothing that I know of in Title II ADA that says that you need to provide all your stuff in different languages. But what WCAG does talk about is it says if you do have stuff in different languages, the assistive technology needs to be able to read that correctly. And so that just boils down to some pretty simple stuff. Putting a lang attribute on your HTML tag, the correct lang, like if you have a page in Spanish, on the HTML tag of the page, it needs to say lang equals ES. And then if you have like a passage of text that's in another language, that also needs to be coded up with that lang attribute. So does that help to answer your question, Neil? I think the overall answer is no. Nothing in Title II says you have to provide multiple language support. But
Yeah,
if you do have,
that's helpful.
yeah. Okay, great.
Thank you.
And somebody else has their hand up.
This is Alaja. My question is mainly on the ADA compliance and remediation for the documents that we support on the web pages, either behind the login or public facing static pages. So I see somebody saying PAC 2026 can be used. The main question I have is, since Adobe license is kind of a rare find for everybody in departments to use it. So any direction on what tool can be used in place of having licenses and widespread use?
So we are, go ahead, John.
No, you go ahead.
In those cases, we're hoping that this master contract can help fill some of those gaps to obtaining some of these tools to check. If it is, because Dubbot will tell you only if there are tags, but it's not going to tell you, are the tags correct? Are they in the correct order? Right now, it seems like Adobe Acrobat Pro has been the best tool that we found so far for doing that. John, you want to add to that?
No, great answer.
Thank you so much. But
yeah.
but again, to add on to that, yes, Dubbot seems to be good for that. But let's say our pages are PII and PHI heavy. In that case, what would be the direction, if there's any at this point?
So a document that has PII,
or a web page that has PII and which actually leads to that documents.
I don't believe that, John, correct me if I'm wrong here. I don't believe that Adobe Acrobat stores that information anywhere.
Yeah. If you're talking about Adobe Pro, I don't think it reaches out and will take your information or anything like that. Now there is an Adobe API that hits a cloud server, and yeah, you would probably not want to use that. But that's like a system you'd have to set up. But just the Adobe Pro, I don't think it reaches out.
But what if many users don't have that to check and remediate?
Well, we're working on a statewide contract to talk about what other options that you have. There's other tools besides Adobe Pro that you could use for remediation. Something called PAC. But maybe we should take this question a little bit more offline, because there's a couple of hands up and we're hitting 12 o'clock here.
Good, thank you very much.
Sure. How about Johnny?
Yes. You were talking about, so one of y'all did a review of our site, and first one was that we need to do a HTML lang equals EN on every page. Is that correct?
Yeah, that sounds familiar. I think I did that, Johnny.
Yep. Yeah, and I'm one of the ones working on stuff. All right, thanks.
Okay, great. Yeah. Sarah?
Yeah, I just wanted to make sure that you all are still of the opinion that the rule only applies to public facing content, that it does not apply to our internal content, like our content on our SharePoint site for our employees.
That's our understanding, Sarah.
Yeah, that is Title II with the deadline, but the content you're talking about for employees behind a login, that still needs to be made accessible, but it's under a different title. It's Title I. And Title I was not given a compliance state.
Thanks.
Good answer.
But doesn't Title I only require reasonable accommodation? It doesn't require proactive accessibility.
That sounds correct. So
Yeah.
like if someone, needed access, if someone doing their job couldn't do their job because something wasn't made accessible, then they'll need a reasonable accommodation to help them do their job. And sometimes that means like, if someone who can't see, maybe that's a screen, maybe that's a reader assistant. That's a type of reasonable accommodation for that kind of thing. A live interpreter, that's another reasonable accommodation. So, yeah, great question. All right, how about this last question? And we're happy to take more offline if we need to. So, Vani.
Hey, good afternoon. So I have posted one question on the screen reader because in the checklist, WCAG checklist, we have some criterias which needs manual testing or screen reader to be used. The bot or Wave cannot test those criteria. So is it under scope to determine whether the site meets EDA compliance requirements?
So your question was about manual testing. I just didn't quite get the question.
Yeah, manual testing and screen readers.
You want to know what that means?
No, I want to know if that is required. That is under scope to determine the site meets ADA compliance requirements.
Okay. I would, honestly, I would say, Vani, that everything needs to be manually tested. So automated testers like Dubbot and other automated testing tools are not going to catch every accessibility issue.
Correct.
It really requires a person with some skill and some tools to evaluate the accessibility. And so that's the manual testing process. And a screen reader is one tool to use during that process.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, and we do have probably a good time to plug our service. Amy and I have a service that we do manual testing, but we try to, so that we're not completely flooded with requests, we try to focus on web apps, not just necessarily static site content. Dubbot does a pretty good job for catching most issues on static site content, especially if you have Digital Commons as your platform. Digital Commons has a lot of accessibility built in, but if you're on Dubbot and you're not on Digital Commons and you're finding some issues and you have some concerns, we can definitely help look into that too and do a little poking around, manual testing on that. But I'm going to give you a link now. If you want manual testing for some web app, then that's a service that Amy and I provide. That was what Johnny was talking about before. He said during a manual testing review, we found an issue. We found that some laying attribute was missing on an HTML tag. So that's something that we'll find in our testing. So great question.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Yeah. All right, Amy, you want to wrap it up?
All right, you all. Thank you for coming. We will post today's video on our YouTube channel. We'll let you know when it's there. Again, you might see it show up in this meeting channel. That one, some people have a really hard time accessing it because of the tenant issues. But we will let you know when it's posted on YouTube, and we will also post the presentation And thank you for your participation today and all the questions. And yeah, have a good rest of your day. Thank you.
Thank you.